All right, and with that, I have 5:30, so let's call the meeting to order. Could the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Henry,
Present, Glenn Henry.
Councilmember Mock,
Present.
Councilmember Sayer,
Present.
Councilmember McKnight,
Present.
Mayor Johnson.
I'm here, present. Thanks, Brenda. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for tuning into tonight's work session. Work sessions are conducted to provide City Council with introductory information, opportunities to provide staff guidance, and to facilitate initial conversations on a topic. No votes are taken. As such, there is not an opportunity provided for members of the community to provide comments or ask questions during a work session. Those interested in providing comments to the City Council on any city-related topics are encouraged to participate in community comment during the regular meeting via Zoom that begins at 7 o'clock. Information related to joining the Zoom conferencing services can be found by clicking on the meeting agenda. All right, item number 2 on the agenda tonight is introduction of employees. Jeremy, Alf, Chad, you want to take it away?
I'd love to. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I would like to introduce our newest member of the Public Services team, Jeremy Elf, originally from Wisconsin, now lives in Chaska. Started with the city of Carver in March. What we like about Jeremy is his positive attitude, his willingness to help out with any of the projects, and his previous equipment experience working on his uncle's orchard. And just for the record, he is a Green Bay Packers fan.
Yes! Jeremy.
With that,
Or an Aaron Rodgers fan.
So much for two truths and a
and
lie.
that is Jeremy.
Jeremy, that was going to be my first question. Whereabouts in Wisconsin did you grow up?
Sorry, what was that?
Where did you grow up? Where in Wisconsin are you from?
Oh, Menominee,
Okay.
originally.
Me no man.
So a little bit close to like the Eau Claire area.
Yep, right off of 94. All right. Jeremy, we have a tradition with new folks. As a way to get to know you a little bit better, we like to play Two Truths and a Lie. Are you prepared? Is that something you're comfortable with?
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't you have at it? Tell us your 2 truths and a lie.
Okay. 1, I had a stroke last year. 2, I have 2 daughters. 3, I have created promo videos for a small town theater.
Okay. Christy and I, come on, Glenn. All right, in the room here, wow, we have 1 vote for everything. Online, it looks like a lot of 2s and 3s. Brent guessed 1. Which one's your lie, Jeremy?
Number 2, I only have 1 daughter.
Oh! Oh.
Good
Well,
thing she's not listening in.
Well, welcome. We are thrilled to have you on board. I'm always happy to have another Packers fan on the staff. And we're really getting to the point where we're kind of tipping the balance a little bit. We're becoming
You have to stop
no
there.
longer the minority here. So, listen, it's been a rough week. We can talk about Packers.
How's Aaron?
Jeremy, welcome. I don't know. Why don't we just do a quick round of introductions, if that's okay? And Jeremy's looking on Zoom, so he's getting the meeting room, the room view. So if you want to like wave your hands to indicate which one you are. Jeremy, I'm Courtney. I'm the mayor. Laura, why don't you go ahead?
I'm Lori Sayre, council member.
Wave to. Okay. Glenn, you want to go?
I'm Glenn Henry.
I'm Christy Mock, council member.
I'm Joy McKnight. I'm also council member.
Jeremy and I have met.
Okay. All right. Well, just wanted to introduce us, those of us who you might not run into necessarily every day. So welcome, Jeremy. It's great to have you on board. Thanks for coming tonight. You can either stay for the rest of the work session or bail out at this point. Totally up to you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Moving on to item number 3, the Planning Commission appointment. Ms. Sonzheim.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. As you know, a vacancy was created on the Planning Commission with Jennifer Lane's resignation. And Krista Goodell, previously serving as the alternate, will be appointed to the regular board member position at your regular meeting tonight that is on the consent agenda. And in order to fill that open position that is created, which is the second alternate position, you discussed at your last meeting on April 19th that you were going to forego any additional interviews and appoint one of the 3 candidates that previously interviewed for the Planning Commission in February, but were not selected at that time. Therefore, the city did reach out to those 3 candidates. I hope I am pronouncing their names correctly. Kayla Pascoe, Phil Schlechter, and Daniel Velick, and all 3 expressed interest in this position. So tonight at the work session, you will be discussing that appointment, and then your appointment will actually be made at the regular meeting, which is where you will take action on that appointment. So a work session is just discussion on those 3 candidates.
All right.
I would be happy to answer any other questions that you might have. Otherwise, I will let you discuss.
Vicki, I think there was our question at the last meeting. There was a motion that failed for someone on the Planning Commission. Do you have who that is? I'm sorry. So a motion failed for someone to join the Planning Commission. Which one of the applicants was that?
I can answer that question
Perfect.
since I seconded that motion. It was for Phil Schechter.
Okay.
And he is my current recommendation to fill the alternate position. What I liked about his comments in the interview, I think he brings a little bit of diversity to the council since he lives in the villas, which is a different type of housing that we have in Carver. So I liked that perspective. I also liked his comments on kind of balancing the community between, homes and businesses, recreation and infrastructure. So anyway, I thought he would bring a good, different voice to the commission.
I liked him too. He seemed very well researched and like somebody who will absolutely ask questions. So. Christine, thoughts?
Joy, yes, I agree with you, and I'm happy to go that route. And I want you to know that the first time back in the council chambers, I just looked left to look at you as you were speaking, even though you're not. But no, I agree with you.
Does anybody else have any thoughts?
I was kind of leaning towards Kayla myself. With her experiences attorney and local, I think she had some great insight as to both Carver and kind of the direction.
Lori, thoughts? I believe you made the motion for
Yes,
Phil.
I did, yeah. And I would like to lead with that same motion, but maybe I don't want to finish the discussion if there was more.
Well, actually, it's not. We're just discussing it now. I
Okay,
believe it's on the
okay.
agenda for
Okay.
the meeting tonight.
Yep.
Am I right? Yeah. So we'll talk. So hold that thought. Let's put a pin in that, as we say in the corporate world, and we can come back to it.
Thanks.
Okay. So I think, unless we want to discuss more, I'm ready to move on. Hearing no objections to that, let's talk about the 3rd Street Bridge. Mr. Lennis.
Hi, good evening. Brett, screen sharing, please. All right, see if I can get the right screen this time. Voila. All right. I should be looking at the first page of my PowerPoint here.
Yep.
As mentioned here, we are going to be talking about 3rd Street Bridge, some history, current status and bridge condition, and some key considerations and some next steps. So we're going to look back a couple of years at a lot of discussions that occurred and what does that mean for us today. So just a little bit about what we're talking about here. The 3rd Street Bridge is an arch bridge here, right on 3rd. I'm sure you've all seen it. It was constructed in 1912. So it's an old bridge. It's a pretty old structure. Sufficiency rating of 50.8. If you haven't seen that, that only means so much. But it effectively means the bridge is in poor condition. It's aged and it's deteriorating, and it's starting to show some failure points. It goes a lot lower. If you look at all the bridges in the state, you'll see some bridges that are in the 30s and ultimately are in a condition that's not suitable to drive on. That's not where Third Street, the Third Street Bridge is right now. It just means it's showing its age, it's starting to deteriorate, and you definitely need to start considering replacement, and that's really what we're going to be talking about here. So the bridge replacement was reviewed in 17. So that was with the 2017 street reconstruction project. And a lot of talk happened about what should be done on this particular bridge at that time, because you're redoing the road over it. So there's a number of options that I wanted to go back and talk through as to why we are where we are and what makes sense moving ahead. So some of the options that were considered was replacement with the bridge, precast beam bridge. That's like Main Street, just a beam bridge, just change bridge styles. Replacement with box culvert arch style bridge. That's just replacing in kind, just a new structure. Remove and modify Third Street to become a component of the levee system. That would effectively remove the bridge. And then remove and construct a pedestrian bridge over Spring Creek. Get rid of vehicular traffic on Third, and just run peds and bikes over it, and get a cheaper bridge structure that way. And then ultimately, they also looked at leaving in place limit uses for large vehicles, and by that I'll elaborate that ultimately meant by using one-way traffic by design here. Council opted to proceed with option 5 in 2017, which was leave it and limit uses. Now that wasn't necessarily load posting restricting. It was limiting the amount of traffic that was over the top of it. We are getting to the point of some very, very minor load postings. There's much more severe load postings out there, but right now we're getting to that point where we're trying to keep the extremely heavy vehicles off of it. So the council opted to proceed with option 5 in the 2017 project. There's some unknowns related to funding. How would you pay for replacement? Uncertainty on if the city Carver wanted 3 bridges and 3 blocks. And then at the time, clearly leaving it in place was the lowest cost option that fit the budgets and such. So the takeaway was it was left in place with the idea that at a later date it needed to be attended to, and I think we're nearing that point of later, where we're probably gonna have to think a little bit harder about what to do. So Third Street closure option. This is just going back in time. One of the things that was kicked around in 17, actually closing the roadway and replacing the bridge, or just a ped only facility, that was passed on in lieu of this, which is what's built today. So this is the one way with parking, and they're leaving the bridge in place for replacement at a later date. So of course, you all know what it looks like today, but there's your bridge underneath the constructed roadway. And here's our current status. So you can see this is it's an old structure, 1912. Concrete holds up for a long time. But it is starting to show its age. It sees a lot of water, and that takes some of the concrete with it, and a lot of sediment around the foundation, and so it's held up extremely well for a bridge this age. But moving on to the next slide here, it is getting to that point where it's turning the corner in the wrong direction. So right now, the city of Carver has your bridge inspection done by Carver County. You are not a state aid city. MSA cities obviously would get a little bit of state money that you could apply towards bridge inspections. With that not being the case, Carver County does do the service of inspections for non-state aid cities. So this is a inspection report from Carver County. It's been done fairly recently. October 21st was the report. But what's highlighted is the key words is recommend replacement of culvert and adjacent walls before partial failures of either causes obstruction in the channel. It's going to be a standing recommendation moving forward. It isn't imminent as far as what they're recommending. If they felt there was a safety issue, this report would be quite a bit stronger. It would be the structure needs to be closed. and they wouldn't leave a whole lot of uncertainty to that. So they're suggesting that it needs to be replaced, and a failure would, be an inconvenience and require some immediate action that is generally undesirable versus just a planned replacement. But they're also not going to the point of saying it's not safe to travel over, so and needs to be closed. So that's the latest report that we really wanted to talk through. So the considerations based on council history is the bridge was functioning but needed replacement. Delay remains possible. Funding was the key issue in 17. It wasn't there. Planned direction based on the prior alternative selected was replace Third Street Bridge as soon as practical, conditioned on funding and bridge condition, and then return Third Street to its current designed condition for traffic and parking. So really what's changing based on that prior discussion was the bridge condition is starting to get to the point where it's becoming more imminent that something happens, and we really have to start thinking about what that funding package looks like, because you can, something like this, you can certainly kick the can for a while, but if the bridge comes down, the funding is going to be an immediate need, and everything has to be figured out immediately versus just trying to program it, see if we can get some funds to the table and get it taken care of before anything happens that's more pressing for action and more disruptive to budgeting. So the current considerations is the need is elevated, requires funding not currently programmed. MnDOT funding may be available. Carver, as a state aid city, will impact funding inspections as when Carver becomes state aid, an MSA city, the inspections would be on the city of Carver to take care of these moving forward. Timing is of significance with MnDOT requests for MnDOT bonding. It's a bridge replacement bond funds is really what we're looking at right now. We've got a couple of calls in to evaluate the options and timing, and we'll report back on that. Historic bridge structure requires a lot of advanced permitting. We've been through this before, and it is certainly a complication. That being said, it's understood, it's known about, and I believe there's been some progress made on whether or not this would be a reasonable bridge for replacement. So, but in all cases, we should be expecting a long lead time. So the bridge replacement next steps would be replace bridge and return Third to its current condition, opened traffic and parking. Unless we hear otherwise, that's what we'd be pursuing for direction. Increase bridge elevation slightly to align with the levee effort. We're aware of what's going on with the levee design, and there's some slight advantages to bringing that bridge up a little bit, and so we tie the efforts together. So they align by design and what we're trying to accomplish. Near-term next steps would be review funding options and timing considerations with MnDOT. That's in progress. Consider levee design needs and future bridge elevations. That's also in progress. We'll be pretty well synced up with the levee effort, obviously, and what this bridge needs to become and what elevations it should be set at. And then a potential next step based on some of the MnDOT discussions would be begin applications for funding and whatever those applications require, and finalize funding plan for replacement. So that would be the next step as we see it, but open to comments, questions, and thoughts otherwise on how the council would like to move ahead on this. So any questions or comments?
Questions?
Dan, what type of, it says long lead time should be expected. Can you give us a ballpark as what defines a long lead time?
I would say a year is what I would put in my head. It's 6 months to a year and a half. Some historic bridges are, I mean, they're just shot down. They won't allow you to replace them. So I've been through this to the degree that it's extremely difficult with some bridges. That being said, I'm not expecting this one to be one of those, but I would say it's definitely going to add at least a lead time of 6 to 12 months on anything to say we're ready to go on permitting from the time we say go and submit permits.
Is that lead time specifically because the Army Corps of Engineers takes as long as they do?
It's complicating because there's a lot of parties that get consulted. The Army Corps is the lead agency. They have to consult with anybody and everyone that has an interest. And every once in a while, there's somebody that sticks up for leaving in place and rehabilitation. And that's what complicates the process. Is removal is the challenge to overcome. Removal and replacement is where you actually are having to get that permitted, versus what in many cases people would pursue rehabilitation in place to preserve the historic integrity of it. So it gets into the study of what makes it historic. It gets into the consulting parties that they ask, and whether or not those consulting parties really go active in this pursuit to keep it in place and rehab it versus replace it. That's how it gets complicating.
Okay, have you looked into I saw that we would have to raise the bridge if we wanted it to continue to have traffic, as in elevation to bring it up to the walls that we have of the toes of the creek line, of the creek bed. How high would it have to be?
Yeah, we're still looking at that. What I can tell you is there's a benefit to raising that a number of inches, we'll say, for the time being. I can't say it's going to take it into a whole different category of what you'd have out there today. So all I can tell you is that is an important tie to make sure we set the elevation.
Yeah, it's inches, not feet. So
yeah,
I think the last time, this is a ballpark, but it was in the area of like 18 inches of additional elevation to get us up.
Okay.
yeah.
Anything else, Glenn?
Have we thought about if we're going to, because I was looking at the photos, we're still going to keep the parking lot on the west side of the creek, correct?
As it stands, we'd be putting back what's out there today, unless we hear otherwise. That would be the intent. Replace and put it back.
Parking lot would be.
What area?
Well, access to it would be if we decide not to go with.
Access would be, but the actual parking lot itself would be.
Okay. Well, that's my questions for right now.
So I think this is great if we can get this done. I know that Glenn was, I kind of hear what you're inferring about the option that we had looked at a number of years ago about closing the 3rd Street. I am not interested in that. While I enjoy the outside the box kind of thinking and something different, we decided to put that parking lot in for the specific reason that we needed more parking downtown. So to take more parking away now, I don't think is in the best interest of attracting the businesses and keeping them going, and considering the amount of traffic that actually goes through there now. So the only other question I had was going to be about how high it needs to be raised. Will it be a hump in the middle? Do we have to actually, raise the entire road up? And it sounds like maybe we don't have answers to all those questions yet, but again, it doesn't sound like it's feet. It sounds like it's under 2. So, is that right, Dan?
Yeah, that's accurate. I'd like to give you an exact number, but I'll be wrong. So
well, then please, we'll just stay with what we have. But that's all I have.
Yeah,
Thank you. Okay.
We think we can put it back to the current configuration, I guess is my comment.
Okay.
It's a little higher.
It's nice to see like what the county says about it, and just kind of relief that there isn't like anything alarming as far as safety. But when it just says there's the concern, it sounds about partial failures that would cause obstruction of the channel. I can handle that. I mean, if we know about it, see it, I feel like we have equipment that we could remove it and keep on flowing.
But that means the bridge can't be crossed.
Exactly.
If it's not just that. That means that the structure is
Oh,
crumbling
okay.
from the inside out, so that means no more traffic over the top.
So if there was partial failures that caused obstruction of the channel, so this is my question for Dan, does that mean that they would close the bridge?
Yeah, if it's severe enough, I would say if it's significantly obstructing the channel, something notable fell in. So there's a pretty high likelihood that that would happen.
Okay, all right, well thanks for clarifying, that changes my answer. I thought it was, things start, just keep the water flowing, but that's different. But if it can be timed with, the right financing sources, definitely want to pursue this. And then the other thing that I really like is that it's my understanding that how this all turned out, it's very likely that we wouldn't lose parking stalls. So it's a nice positive.
Joy, go ahead.
I concur with Councilmember Mock on the comments about the usage of the bridge. I wasn't on the council when we previously considered this, but I definitely appreciate the extra parking that we put along here. We've really enabled some significant additional parking for the downtown area that I really wouldn't want to lose either. So I concur with keeping the configuration as it is when it is rebuilt or whatever we get funding for. Dan, just out of curiosity, if it's a historic bridge, does that help us in any way getting MnDOT funding?
Not always for replacement, no. because if we're applying to replace it, that they're going to look at is it a bridge we should be replacing or rehabilitating? So it tends to be overall just a complication, but yes, it's what helps us is the structural condition and the report. That's the number one thing.
Got it. Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you. So I agree with Joy and Christy. Plan-wise, I have no problem closing down that bridge, but for the parking that we have literally on the bridge, and then, as Glenn pointed out, the access to the other parking lot, I think as the years come, as downtown gets busier, as more businesses bring in more folks during the day and all hours, we just can't go without losing any more parking spots. The one thing, Dan, and I think you're on it, but I just really want to reiterate, it doesn't make sense to rebuild this in something that wouldn't match or align with our plans for the certified levy project. So making sure that it's raised up. I think it's a miss that the other bridge was rebuilt and still floods when we have big floods coming in. Spring Creek backs up. So I want to make sure that this is another option to cross Spring Creek whenever the flooding in Spring Creek gets backed up. Am I understanding that right? That making this in line with the levy project would mean that we wouldn't shut it down? Wouldn't have to when there are floods?
Yeah, that's the intent. Okay. So yes, we're definitely tracking that.
Okay.
So as a need.
That's all I had. So it sounds. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
If I'm not mistaken, we limited the travel access to a one-way. If we rebuild this bridge, would we open that back up to two-way traffic and still have parking on the sides? Or is that too much in the weeds right now?
I can give you a real quick opinion on it. Once you rebuild it, it's going to be load rated for everything. So the bridge won't have anything to do with.
So potentially we could open it up to two-way traffic on that bridge instead of a one-way again, correct?
You could, but you'd lose the angle parking. There's not enough space for.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think when we had a discussion, it was about
get into
sight lines
both
too,
sides of
like
the road to widen it out. So yeah, agreed.
At Third Street and Ash? Or Broadway?
No, Broadway. Getting out of there and turning left.
I think keeping it the angle makes sense. I mean, we change it to this to change it back again, especially now that we have that little parking lot in there, and how it functions now seems to be working well from what I've seen. So I think it might be confusing too to have it one way, switch it, take it back, and keep switching back and forth. I think we should, in my opinion, just stay status quo with the configuration of it.
Well, I believe the topic is what are we going to do with the bridge, and then we can figure out the semantics of the traffic flows later. Is that?
Correct, but you asked the question.
Yeah. I like the traffic, I like the parking and the way it is too. But if we have an option where we can actually open that back up to two-way, let's just keep that on the table as well.
All right. So Dan, you are looking for our blessing to be able to begin applications and funding and shake the trees for funding for this project, correct?
Yeah, or any other comments that would influence what we're talking about
Okay.
as we chat money and replacement, yes.
I did not hear any objections to moving forward with that in that process, but if there are any, let's hear them now. Okay, lots of head shakes. I think we're good. Dan, do you have what you need from us?
You bet.
Go find the money.
report back with-
I do think we should talk a little bit, and Dan, I don't know if you're prepared to talk about the scope. 'Cause, you know, if you start developing, there'll be a development of plans, correct, Dan, in this exercise?
Yeah, possibly. Again, I was gonna try and get that outline from Mindat as I chat with them, but it's possible that we'd have to submit bridge plans and get them.
I think it'll be a next step, because, you know, there's a range of probably $1.5 million for this bridge, correct, Dan?
Yeah.
You know, so
Ballpark.
there's gonna be, I would say, a considerable expense in preparing those plans, so, I think the next step would be for the council to take a look at that, and we can diagnose what the funding source would be for that. If it's an interfund loan, et cetera, 'cause what should we figure in, 15%?
Yeah, probably 10% on construction here, but again, I'm still looking to get timing sorted out, but yes, it's something to that nature.
So just kind of preparing for that.
Okay. And
mentally.
as we're thinking long-term and kind of preparing mentally, it would be construction roughly in 23?
I guess I'd like to hear a little bit from the council on that, like how aggressive do you want it to be? We can both, you know, kind of full throttle to try to get plans in place by the time, before we become a state aid city, which obviously changes or keeps up a desirable funding position for the city because it relates to pay for the bridge, and that's just kind of the culvert, if you will. It's not the head end wall or any other work on top of the bridge, or a moderate pace, which would take you out of that funding cycle, but is probably a planning process that you're more used to with an infrastructure project of this size.
So for me, Brent, I think that we should move forward faster than slower. We've already put it off a couple years. We've already sat on it. We've already changed it to accommodate the fact that we knew it was starting to have issues. I would rather move faster than slower, especially we don't want to have a failure and somebody be on that bridge when it happens. And knowing that we've already delayed, for me, as long as I feel like we can, I would say charge ahead. That's my opinion.
I have the same.
I am curious if there's any. I'm not in a super huge rush. I don't think that we're at the point where it's literally going to crumble tomorrow or in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But Dan, I'm curious if we can put the plans together and have kind of everything ready before we become a state aid city, and then figure out when we're going to do it, or how quickly we have to break ground and start this project. because we're gonna cross that threshold of becoming a state aid city sooner rather than later in this process, and if that affects it. I think if we can get more funds to help with this and to reduce the burden on the taxpayers in the city of Carver, then we should do whatever we can on whatever timeline that takes. But I don't know if there are ways that we can, you know, wait a little bit longer. I'm fine with that as well.
Is it more advantageous to have it done sooner than later, correct?
It's
Funding?
hot.
For local sheriff funding, yes.
Okay.
Just to answer that question in general, from my perspective, what I plan on doing is pretty much offering a recommendation as what I think is going to be the most financially responsible. In all cases for pursuing the funding, I think it's a given. You want to get in front of the MnDOT office for bridge replacement funds as soon as you can. Because as soon as you can might mean we have to wait 2 years before it actually gets to the point of a project that they will allow. They will set the schedule in many regards based on what they already have programmed. And so the sooner the better in that particular case. But of course, if it gets on there right away, you might have some cost sharing benefits. You have to finance, everything you need to do to get the funds right away. That's the disadvantage. In the future, state aid, you're going to have state aid money to pay for your local share, and that may not be what you want to do with it. And that's the pro and con of timing. In all cases, get in front of the bridge office as soon as possible for bond funds, because that's going to set your schedule.
So as an example, the council authorized a transfer from sanitary sewer to pay upfront costs for Carver Parkway, which has been repaid with the bond proceeds. So think about that, this project in that same way. I'd be doing, asking you to authorize an interfund loan of probably roughly the same amount, 200,000 upfront money for plans, specifications, just to get it, give you a
Anybody's not comfortable with that, this would be the time.
Well, I think we should move ahead and start looking for the funding and have Dan go about proceeding with putting together the plans and stuff, and then anything else after that, I guess we'll just cross that bridge when we get to it.
Oh, that was worth waiting for, Glenn, thank you. Okay, and with that, I think we definitely need to move on. Glenn has had his moment. Thank you, Dan. Hopefully you caught that and that the WebEx didn't cut out, because that was worth waiting for.
You got it. That was a classic.
Okay.
Good way to end, right?
Dan, you're good. You have, Brent, you're comfortable with where we're at? We're good? Okay.
I'm good.
Okay, thank you guys. Moving on, item number 5, the draft UTV ordinance amendment. Mr. Harris from Florida.
Greetings, Council. Before you is a memorandum and a draft amendment.
He has to speak.
220A.
Larry,
You got your muffle button on?
I've got what?
Do you have your muffle button on? Because you're very soft and we can barely hear you.
Hang on, is this any better?
Yes, it is.
All right, hang on. I'll get up by the microphone.
Larry, before you start, would you mind introducing Clarissa to the council too?
I will. On this call is Clarissa Volpe of my office. You will be seeing her more and more. She's met Brent and some of the staff. She's a newer attorney in my office, and she's been working in the background on some matters for the city, and you'll start seeing her more in the foreground on a go-forward basis.
Everybody, nice to be with you all.
welcome, Clarissa. We'll let you do 2 truths and a lie at a different time.
You're not a
that
Packer
sounds
fan,
good.
are you?
Just because
Oh,
it's
yeah.
planned, thank you.
Any chance you're a Packers fan, Clarissa?
I refuse to answer on the advice of counsel.
Oh,
think
well
that's a yes.
played. So you have in front of you a draft amendment and a memorandum on the issue of whether a previously issued permit and sticker gets retained by the owner of the UTV when they sell it, or whether it transfers, or potentially transfers, I guess, to the new owner of the UTV. This was an item that came up at a council meeting a while back. I was asked to take a look at it and make a proposal, so that's what I'm doing. The proposal as I have drafted it indicates that the sticker potentially stays with the vehicle, basically similar to the license plate on your car. If you buy a new car and sell your old car, you have to get a new license plate. In my experience and my checking around, that's usually what happens. One of the primary reasons that is done is to minimize staff issues. The other issue is, these types of stickers are not, as a practical matter, easily removable from a vehicle or a UTV. So my recommendation is that to minimize staff interference, the ordinance be amended to indicate that if owner A sells a UTV and buys a new UTV, that owner has to get a new sticker, new permit in the city. The owner that purchases the vehicle can go file a transfer application and essentially for no fee, keep the existing sticker for the remainder of its life. So the sticker, if the UTV stays in or around the city of Carver, that sticker certainly has some utility. If it gets sold to somebody up in Walker to run around on Leech Lake, it doesn't have a lot of utility. And my recommendation is based primarily on practice in other communities, practice on a statewide basis, and minimizing the burden for staff. If the council wants to do something else, we'll do something else, and I'll draft an ordinance for you. But those are the parameters. That's my recommendation, and I'm here to listen to what the council wants me to do.
All right, Larry, thank you. For me, that all makes sense. It seems rather consistent with not only other vehicles, but what other communities are doing with like registrations. Other comments, thoughts?
I know this was something that I brought up, so I wanted to comment on it. I'm fine with what's written here and how this plays out. I'm glad that it's clarified because we had some discussion and I don't think that we fully went through and got where we needed with it. So if this is fine with the rest of the council, it's fine with me as well, being that I was the one who had brought it up initially.
Right. Joy, any thoughts?
I don't have any other comments. I think this fits the bill of what we were looking for, and I support the amendment.
All right.
I support the amendment and appreciate the clarification.
Glenn?
Well, it stays consistent with both transfer motorcycle and just about everything else. You buy a motor vehicle, that goes transfer, so I'm fine with it. Thank you, Larry.
All right.
Thank you, Clarissa.
All right, Larry, we love your work. Or Clarissa, if this is your work. Big fans. I think we're good. All right.
So I'll be on your next regular meeting.
Okay. All right, item 6, food truck discussion. Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I will say my name is on this agenda item, but I suspect I might be getting a little bit of support from Vicky and Larry and Brent and Chad, since this has been a little bit of an all hands on deck topic as we've started to work through. So at the April 19th meeting, Councilmember Mock requested a discussion about food trucks in Carver. Just to open the discussion back up from when we previously discussed, if you'll recall, we previously have discussed food trucks on a more semi-permanent basis at Community Park when there was a coffee user that was interested in being there pretty regularly. At the time of that discussion, the council decided not to move forward with formal language for food trucks, specifically permanent. And currently we're using our transient merchant requirements and permit for food trucks. So the process includes a permit that Vicky reviews, a background check, and a $55 fee right now. Most of the food trucks that we've seen this year have been at Fleet Farm, although we do anticipate several in Community Park as youth sports pickup, and we've seen a few downtown. At the time of our staff memo, it was reported that there were 15 permits for 2021 Since then, we've had 5 additional applications. So we're sitting at 20 for 2021. So it's been a really popular year for food trucks, which has been exciting for a lot of reasons, I think, especially in Carver. So in the packet tonight, there were 2 examples of how other communities work through food trucks. So we have Excelsior's and Minnetonka's process in the packet. So just a quick nitty gritty on both. In Excelsior, the food truck licenses are limited to 5, so you can have 5 different licenses in the city. You can only have a food truck on private property unless it's part of a civic festival or event. So it's a little bit different than what we've been doing, where we have allowed them on city streets. And then their hours are 8 a.m. until 10 p.m. A little bit different in Minnetonka. They have some different specifications where a food truck has a 5-hour limit, limited to private property with hours from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. On residential, and then in commercial, 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. And property owner's permission is required. So it's on private property only. So tonight, there are a couple topics that we are starting the discussion with. The first being, are the current regulations and processes that we are having for food trucks meeting expectations? Talking through some common food truck discussions we could have, so things like hours, location, days that they're able to operate in the city of Carver. And then we also want to talk a little bit about unintended consequences. So having 20 permits so far in the 5th month of 2020, it's pretty obvious that food trucks are really popular. Just at a staff level, we have questioned a little bit if they are really popular in Carver because we make the process kind of easy. So we are pretty quick to work with someone if they're looking to have an event or have a food truck downtown. So just wanted to bring up a few things that we're looking for, but also anticipate that the council has spent some time thinking about this as downtown becomes a bit more vibrant this spring, and we've started to see some more food trucks in the area. So I'll open it up for discussion. We can start with considerations. Otherwise, any thoughts that the council has are welcome.
All right. Let's work through the considerations that are in Aaron's memo, starting with number 1. Are the current processes and regulations for food trucks meeting the community's expectations? Thoughts? Good. I'll start. First of all, I think we're solving for a problem that we don't have here. I don't know what it was, the Southern Comfort, the Happy Days, something food truck was downtown a few weeks ago. It was wildly popular. They sold out. I ran into Jody Hesse, and she said that they had their 2nd best Saturday since owning that business. They've owned the business since late last summer, last fall. And it was ridiculously, it was a hit. We've all seen them up at Fleet Farm. My concern is that if we restrict food trucks on city streets, then we're going to continue to see them up at Fleet Farm, at Children of Tomorrow, not driving traffic to our downtown. This was a draw. We didn't receive any complaints about this food truck. So I want to. Okay, but. Right. So but are we going to start reacting off of it with all, no disrespect, Christy, I don't think that we should become a council that starts working off the complaints of one person.
I don't think so either, but I also think there's something to be said for looking a little bit proactively. Now, that food truck was fantastic down here. I visited it myself. I went there. But if any of you would like me to set a generator outside your house all day on a Saturday from the time you get up in the morning until dinner time, I'd be happy to bring one up and you can listen to it. So what the reason I asked for this to be brought for discussion is not because I want to limit them entirely, because I think it is great, and we've had them down here before outside of just like a Steamboat Days event or something like that. But this is a mix of commercial and residential down here, so I think that we do need to be a little bit sensitive at times to the fact that we have both of that here. Again, I don't want to stop them completely, but I think if it's something where we start having them every single weekend, running generators that are pretty loud. I mean, talking to my neighbor across the street, she was on my sidewalk and I was on my front porch. If you happen to know, that's not far. We had to yell to speak to each other. So again, I'm not against it. I was happy to see it. It brought people. It was fun. It was good. I ate it too. But I'm a little bit fearful if we just leave it super open, that every weekend and any weekend, anybody who applies can put a food truck down here. Those generators are a lot of noise. We are taking up parking stalls too. I don't mind that they are on the road down here. That wasn't a problem for me. But do we allow one a weekend? Do we allow every other weekend? Do we start having 5 of them down here on a weekend? I mean, does it keep going? Does it not? We don't know that yet, but it could. So I'd rather have a little bit more in place so that we know what we're looking at rather than kind of willy-nilly, and then we end up, now we're trying to backtrack a problem. So again, this isn't me saying I don't like food trucks and I wasn't happy with it down here. It's just a little different animal than having it in a parking lot at the park or having it in a parking lot at Fleet Farm. It's on the road. It is next to, a little bit closer to homes. So I think we should be thinking about that a little bit too.
Joy, thoughts?
I guess you kind of answered one of my questions about, were there complaints downtown for the downtown food trucks?
We didn't receive any complaints.
We didn't receive any complaints. Okay. The thing that struck me in the example ordinances or whatever they were called from the other cities was that they really defined whether the truck was in a commercial area versus a residential area. And, I can define Fleet Farm as a commercial area, but what do we define downtown as? That kind of struck me a little bit, just because it is such a mixed area. And so it made me think, do we want to perhaps set some kind of guidelines around hours of operation or quantity of food trucks, or some of the comments that Councilmember Mock has made specifically for the downtown. I don't want to be too limiting again, and I'm not sure we need to restrict or in any other area, because I think we have better, clear definitions of what's a residential area versus a commercial area. I'm not sure what the answer is, but downtown specifically stuck out to me.
I have a question. Downtown, like, as in a good idea, or like add that to restriction, or don't restrict?
I guess my perspective was, if we were going to consider some guidelines or restrictions, I would limit it just to downtown, just because it is a mix of commercial and residential. I don't know what the right answer is, but
So I have some comments, and then I have a question. So if we said that it couldn't be commercial, it needs to be downtown, does that mean Fleet Farm wouldn't be allowed to have one in their parking lot? If we had it where it would just be downtown?
We can do whatever we want, and I think we could outlaw food trucks entirely and not allow them even on private property. Is that right?
So the Fleet Farm is separate because it's private property. We're talking about city-owned property.
I think, Larry, would you mind just kind of jumping in and explaining the council's ability to regulate this issue on public and private property?
Well, under the police power, the city can regulate lots of things. Whether you should regulate it is a whole different question. I mean, you can clearly regulate it on public property, on city streets. You can designate, you can say no with exceptions, you can say yes with exceptions. On private property, conceptually, well, I'd be apprehensive about you trying to prohibit them on private property. I think you can put reasonable restrictions on private property, hours of operation, noise levels, things like that. Have to have a health department license. But you're clearly able to regulate on public property. You have to be a little more balanced doing it on private property.
Okay, thank you. I would not want to restrict anything on private property. I don't think that was part of the discussion, but I'm the one who brought it up because I needed help I needed clarification on it. I am thinking more about, not like guiding it towards certain property. I'm also thinking of community park and the homes adjacent to that. If there's things going on in the parking lot of community park, those residents hear it too. And just because something's allowed in a commercial district on city property doesn't mean the residents won't hear it. I mean, if the thing more is a noise thing, that's really hard to put parameters around. And also, everyone has different opinions on, when they do and don't want to hear things. Some people are more bothered by, late night music versus middle of the day. So I would rather see if a business is going to come in town and provide something and we have that opportunity, allow them where they choose to open up their food truck. We could maybe offer, no, I was gonna say, I mean, I guess, Mr. Harris, this would be a question. Could we make it more an incentive or more attractive? Like, there's no fee if you're downtown because we really want to draw people down there. But if you're at one of our other parks, there is a fee.
Did you hear that, Larry?
Yeah, so my question is, can we?
Yeah, I heard it.
Okay.
I mean, I get my first comment would be this. The city looked at this, the council looked at this very seriously 2 years ago. And at the end of the day decided it did not want to get into the regulatory soup of trying to regulate food trucks. If things have changed, you can certainly do it. But recognize that these regulations are complicated, and whatever we draft on the initial go round, you'll be significantly fine tuning in year two because 2 or 3 issues will come up that you've never thought about. So a lot of this comes back to advice I've given the city for years, which is you can regulate darn near anything, but be sure you want to regulate it before you get into it.
So Lori, I just want to make sure I understood you. So for me, the parks, just by nature, because they have more space and people aren't generally as close. So are you saying you want to regulate the parks, but you want to incentivize downtown? Or did I hear you incorrectly?
Yeah, like if I had a choice, if somebody said, hey, we have a food truck, where do you think we should set it up? Not knowing at all where they're going to get their most business or, what other activities are going on, maybe at a field. I would, downtown, because, that's, important to me. And, that's an initiative and goal. Like I really want to drive people down there, businesses. So just based off that. But I feel like we should let who's ever, bringing their food truck, and operating their small, I would think small business, but who's ever operating, let them decide where. I personally have a push, for certain things, but.
Yeah.
Wait, can we just have?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that we make it run around the horn. You have no opinion on this?
Not right now.
Okay, go ahead, Christy.
Okay, now I have to come back to my train of thought.
Yes.
Okay, so then I think one of the things you said was to incentivize downtown. So, I mean, I'm going to go back to the fact of I don't know that we want to incentivize necessarily saying, come to eat, we're going to incentivize downtown, but not community park for when the Black Sox play, let's just say.
Mm-hmm.
But I appreciate saying that some people, the timing of noise can be more distracting than other timing of noise. But again, if this becomes so popular that, let's say there is a food truck here every single Saturday from the summer, I don't know a lot of people who want that voraciousness of the generator.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no like peace and quiet. So you get up at, not get up, I was up long before 9, but at 9 o'clock it starts, and then you hear this constant generator until, they were supposed to be there till 6, good for them. They ran out of food. Good for us too. But you know, that's so. What I'm thinking of is that's a long period of time, and you know, if it starts to be something where it's every single Saturday, that's a lot of noise pollution downtown. We already have a lot going on. And again, I don't want this to sound like I don't want any food trucks to ever come down here. I'm just, if it does become that popular, which we may be putting the cart before the horse here, but, or the food truck before the generator truck. Anyways, I would just hate to see that the people and the residents who live downtown to have that constant noise every single weekend, every single Saturday from morning until, you know, after dinner time.
Yep. Maybe it's something where we research, you know, what type of generators. You know, maybe the Honda generator is maybe quieter.
Okay.
You know, so maybe there's something else to do to balance that.
And someone did say to me that there is, you know, when it comes to generators, you certainly can have ones that are made to be more volume friendly, we'll say that.
Yep.
Yeah, but I don't want to get into regulating what size generators these people have, because, I mean, their refrigeration, their cooktops, and all that other stuff is going to take different amounts of power. And regulating what generators they have or haven't, that's really too deep in the weeds for me. It is. It's.
How do you monitor? I mean, how do you go up? Someone's policing that on the
Well, I guess it's, where do we want to have food trucks is the real question. Not just if, I mean, I like them in the parks. I like them up at Fleet Farm, okay? Because open air, noise disperses, and it's not as much of a noise pollution blight as there would be in a concentrated downtown area. But are there areas downtown we can designate for food trucks?
I would say yes, but you know, I think it was Councilmember Sayer said it. Wherever you put it, one person will like it, and one person will not. And I've thought about, you know, the area of Broadway and Main, no EU building, but I know there's some neighbors that we've had interactions with down on the south end of Broadway that have been concerned about noise on previous events the city's had. So I think there's, as the city attorney said, as soon as you find one spot, you'll have to go back a year later and find others. So I'm not sure that location, at least in the downtown, is going to be significant to eliminating the problem. You know, that will at least address, because it's just denser down here, and you're going to have a home next to a commercial building in, you know, every area that I can think of in the downtown. That someone would want to be at least along Broadway. I mean, I think once you get to Depot Park, Community Park, etc., depending upon, you know, people's point of view, I know we've had concerns about, you know, loud music coming out of Swanson Field that we've addressed a couple of times with the team, and they've handled it. But it's an example of how some people probably like that and some don't. And so, in a community of 5,000, we're going to have different perspectives.
Council, go ahead, Joy.
Can I ask a dumb question? When we have food trucks for like steamboat days, do we provide electricity for those food trucks, or are they all running generators?
They are almost all generators for that weekend.
Okay.
We've occasionally had some that have come, and we've ended up having to plug them in. But it is by far generators. And it's an expected weekend for us.
The only one that we provide electricity to is the Lions beer truck. The rest of them use their own generators.
Okay. Is it an option to provide
We do not
electricity?
We do not put that as an option. I think we had a food truck come once that didn't, I don't know, something happened to their generator, so we ended up plugging them in. But other than that, no, in the contract that they signed for Steamboat Days for us, that they're coming, their application, I guess I should say, it states in there that no, they have to provide a generator.
And to your question, Joy, we've been pretty diligent on saying no to that, just under the they'd be using publicly funded tax dollars to pay for electricity.
Yeah.
For a private entity, so.
Okay.
Been pretty
I didn't know if perhaps a local business who is perhaps sponsoring that food truck could provide it.
They may need more than, it's more than just a plug-in for, where your hairdryer is.
Yeah, I
sometimes,
realize
so,
it might
yeah.
be like
They might not be.
a
I don't know that the
significant
businesses will have
circuit
that
of power. I realize that, but
And
Yeah.
I think
just
that's a
wondering if
good-
that was an option.
I think it's a good thought. I think I would advocate for the council to think about wherever you land on this, what you have the ability to regulate, practically. So, will Vicky and Brenda, when they process, whatever permit is out there, you're gonna want them to try to figure out what their power needs are. Do they have a generator? I would say that might not be in the best position, but if you talk about hours or insurance requirements, those are really easy to check the box. If someone's operating after a certain hour, you call the sheriff's office and they go out there. Those types of things that other cities have are things that we can do. The power stuff, I think, is going to be a little bit beyond our ability to be successful. At least in my
Okay.
opinion.
Yeah, council, I'm gonna ask that we table this. I feel really strongly that this is trying to regulate for the sake of regulation. I don't think we have an issue. We don't have any formal complaints. I think if we talk about noise, I think that the folks in Oak Tree and Copper Hills and Spring Creek and all the new neighborhoods where there are generators running and homes being put up and road construction along JCP would laugh and would probably have some concerns about a generator noise for one day.
But they also have,
Glenn, can I just finish
Yes.
this out here? This feels like big government to me. When Erin made her introduction to this, she talked about how much staff participation there has been in writing this. Frankly, I'm disappointed that we're discussing this. We talked about this 2 years ago, and there still isn't an issue. It just feels icky that because it was in your backyard, you brought it forward. I'm not comfortable with this. It seems like regulation for regulation's sake, and there isn't an issue here to solve.
Okay, well,
I would
first of
just-
all,
Glenn's
Yeah.
I just would like to say that with the generators and the construction zones and all that stuff, there are hours of operation too.
Yep.
That's, if we're gonna look at anything, that would be about as far as I'd like to go.
And just to be clear, if we're going on construction hours, this generator was not outside of construction hours. This food truck was not outside of construction hours.
Saturdays have different hours than weekdays.
But I can't imagine that our ordinances are out, that 9 to 4 is out of the realm of possibility, right? Go ahead, Christine.
okay, so first of all, I'm going to state that I don't regulate to just regulate, and that is not where I stand politically ever, is over-regulation. And when it comes down to being icky that it happened in my neighborhood, it is something that I noticed. I live next to the commercial business district downtown. So I brought it up as, do we want to address it now? Or do we want to wait and see what happens? But I thought it was worth a discussion. So I don't think that I'm comfortable having this put back on me, that this was somehow my pet project, that I'm trying to ban food trucks or over-regulate in the downtown. This is simply something that I wanted to discuss, and I think it's worth a discussion since it is noise and it is something different that we don't have every weekend, and we don't have it every weekend now. So I'm glad that we had the discussion about where we think it, or what everyone thinks about it, but I think the way it has laid out that I have seen and what I was going to comment is that if we don't see that there is a big need for this at this point, that we can go ahead and, as you said, table it till later. But then we're making the choice to say, rather than being proactive, we're gonna wait, it will be reactive if something comes up at a later time. And I'm fine with that if that's how the rest of the council wants to move forward.
I have no issue with if and when it becomes an issue and there are 37 trucks and nobody can park anywhere downtown reevaluating, but I think we're solving for an issue that doesn't exist right now. Any other thoughts? Does anybody else want to?
No, I shared my comments already, thank you.
Okay. you're fine with not going any further. I am proposing we not go any further. Do we have a majority feeling that way?
So I can clarify because I'm not clear either what the majority is. So I would like to table it. I would really like to encourage anyone that has a concern to, call City Hall, email, contact, let's get some of that documented. And I really would like to just allow the food truck owners to decide where to set up. That's my comments.
Thanks, Lori. Glenn, Joy, any closing thoughts? Okay. Aaron, I think you said Brenda, Chad, Brent, Larry, thank you all for putting time into this. Appreciate it. But I am thrilled to be tabling this, to be completely honest. So, let's see. Moving on, city manager's report. Brent.
Just a few things, pandemic related. Vicki, Brenda, and I had a meeting with Marco last week to discuss better ways that we could integrate the Zoom technology. Speaking of unintended consequences, they thought they had a process, and then we mentioned a whole slew of other things to consider. And so they're kind of going back to the drawing board. I do think that it's a kind of a noble pursuit, because I do think Zoom or some form of it would be a long-standing kind of platform for not just council and staff to use, but residents. And so I think hopefully at the end of the day we'll be kind of on the leading edge of how to integrate technology into the council chambers. And then Kathy, LP, and I in about a week are going to be participating in a webinar sponsored by the League of Minnesota Cities and Metro Cities on the federal stimulus money that's coming out. So hopefully we'll have some more details related to expectations and documentation and the availability of work that money can be spent that we can share with so on. And then I know there's been a few questions, and I know I talked to the mayor this afternoon about it. I was wondering, Mayor Johnson, if you'd be willing just to share your thoughts on the use of masks in the council chambers and how you want to see that or open that up for council discussion. I know as things have been going on, the governor has issued some new mask. The CDC has issued some mask guidance related to out of doors, and I think as time goes on, we'll get additional questions. So I just want to open the floor for you to share your thoughts on that.
Sure. Yeah, I think as long as the mask mandate is in place, like it or not, I think we should continue to wear our masks during the meetings. We've done it for a 6-hour day during our strategic planning session. We did it, during Ashland sat up here with us 2 weeks ago and did it. I think that we need to be wearing our masks. I don't think there's any question in my mind about that.
That's all I have.
Okay. City council requests. Anybody have any requests? We haven't had time for this in forever.
Yeah.
Joy? No? Glenn? Shaking. Lori?
I do. Just like calendar-wise, and thank you, Councilmember Mock, for mentioning your June vacation. If there's any times where we know we won't have a planning session, or that a commission, one of the planning commissions, or Heritage, any of those commissioners' meetings aren't going to be on the calendar, that would just kind of help. It would help me plan ahead a little more.
I can tell you that we, at least from, I can't speak on behalf of the committee commission, I prefer that here on that one. For work sessions,
I feel like we're going to have a lot, because we have a lot to be working on,
yeah,
so. Wishful thinking on that one.
I would plan for every work session, though, kind of traditionally, if the schedule allows, we try to cancel the work session near the 4th of July.
Okay.
So that'd be and that would only be if we just kind of had stuff that we could defer.
Right.
Other than that, I would
Okay.
plan for every work session. I don't hear any planning commission.
And not just that one, the parks, the heritage.
I can usually see out the big projects, but things like like a lot split or a conditional use permit generally have a quicker turnaround. So I could definitely look out what we might be doing on the Hammers property or the preserve, but sometimes things just pop up
Okay.
shorter notice.
And the HPC is application driven, so they'll have a meeting this month.
Okay.
And then it's kind of just based on the number of projects, so. But there's a couple other kind of side projects that we're trying to work on, so we might have some more next few months.
Christie? I don't have anything either. All right.
Say, Mayor,
Yeah.
I just thought of something. Has anybody had any feedback regarding speed bumps in town?
You know what?
Yeah.
Christina
Yes.
connected on that, only because it's on the agenda to get an update on the JCP project during our meeting. and
Okay.
Hold that until,
No problem.
yes, I'm sure that will be, yes, but let's wait 20 minutes and talk about it then.
Not a problem.
Okay. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion by Councilmember Henry
Second.
and a second by Councilmember Mott. Any further discussion? All right, could the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Henry,
Aye, Glenn Henry.
Councilmember Mock,
Aye, Christie Mock.
Councilmember Sayer,
Aye, Lori Sayer.
Councilmember McKnight,
Hi, Joy McKnight.
Mayor Johnson.
Hi, Courtney Johnson. All right, motion passes unanimously. We'll see you all in 14 minutes.